Chesterton, featuring Chuck Dahlberg as G.K. Chesterton and Dale Alquist, President of the American Chesterton Society.
When G.K. Chesterton died in 1936, Pope Pius XI called him a gifted defender of the faith. Condolences were sent to Mrs. Chesterton from the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Eugenio Pacelli, who would himself become Pope less than 3 years later. The Church knew that it had lost a great soldier. But in the years since his death, it has become quite obvious that Chesterton is still fighting the battle. His abundant writings are still here for us, speaking to us directly, as timely and as timeless as when he first poured them out onto page after marvelous page. And there's still much to be learned from this unwavering warrior about the art of defending the faith. Perhaps more than any Christian writer in the 20th century, G.K. Chesterton truly embodies these two virtues, wisdom and innocence. As a man and a writer, Chesterton never compromises either. Goodness should not be confused with something soft or passive. Defending the truth means fighting for the truth. And Chesterton says one of the best things is a good fight. When he looked back on his life, he realized that he was always arguing. But that was because he was always defending the truth.
I remember once arguing with an honest young atheist, one who was very much shocked at my disputing some of his assumptions, which were absolute sanctities to him. And he at length fell back upon this question, which he delivered with an honorable heat, defiance, and indignation. Well, can you tell me any man of intellect, great in science or philosophy, who accepted the miraculous? I said, with pleasure. Descartes, Dr. Johnson, Newton, Faraday, Newman, Gladstone, Pasteur, Browning, as many more as you please. To which my young friend made this astonishing reply. Oh, but of course, they had to say that. They were Christians. At first, he challenged me to find a black swan, and then he ruled out all of my swans, because they were black. The fact that all these great intellects had come to the Christian view was somehow or other a proof either that they were not great intellects, or that they had not really come to that view.
It was almost a disappointment to Chesterton that in the modern world there's far too little argument of the real sort. Avoiding the real argument is a way of avoiding the truth. To Chesterton, there's no excuse for this. He says the aim of any public-spirited person should be to find out what the truth is and finding it to defend it. Why? Well, there's a slightly interesting matter of eternity, but there's also that thing that always seems of such immediate concern, the here and now. Chesterton says, without a stable statement of truth, we have nothing upon which to build a solid society. Truth is not merely a religious ideal, it's quite useful for other things too.
Theology is a product far more practical than chemistry.
Truth touches everything, which is exactly why it is attacked from all sides. And so, defending the faith means being ready to talk about everything. Chesterton says things can be irrelevant to the proposition that Christianity is false, but nothing can be irrelevant to the proposition that Christianity is true. No matter what you talk about, you cannot evade the issue of God, which of course is exactly what our society tries to do, especially in the public square.
Religious liberty is supposed to mean a man is free to discuss his faith. In practice, it means he is hardly allowed to mention it.
So, the first step in defending the faith is to insist that we have to talk about God. And there should be nothing unnatural in talking about God. Believing in God is more normal than not believing in God. Atheism, says Chesterton, is abnormality. It goes against what every normal person believes, namely, that there is a meaning and a direction in the world. Religion, he says, is merely the sense of ultimate reality. So everybody's religious because everybody has an ultimate view of things, even if they've not taken the time or the trouble to articulate it. And if they did, they might be troubled by how incomplete a view of things they have, which is too often why they say it doesn't matter what you believe, because they're hoping that what they believe doesn't matter, since they've given so little thought to it. Still, they believe something, even if they seriously believe that what they believe doesn't matter. One of Chesterton's basic points is that man is a creature of faith. Man is a religious animal. Man is an animal who makes dogmas. Trees, he says, have no dogmas, and turnips are also quite broad-minded.
If a man wishes to remain in perfect mental breadth and freedom, he'd better not think at all. Thinking is a narrowing process. It leads to what people call dogma. A man who thinks hard about any subject for several years is in horrible danger of discovering the truth about it. It is really a terrible thing when a man discovers that God gave him a mind to use and not to play with, and a mouth with which to answer questions, and not merely to ask them.
Chesterton disposes of atheists more easily than atheists dispose of God. He says, if there is no God, there would be no atheists. But he actually has more respect for an atheist than he does for an agnostic. An atheist has at least made up his mind. An agnostic takes great pride in the fact that he cannot make up his mind. The agnostic tries to pass himself off as impartial, but the word agnostic does not mean impartial. It means ignorant. What the agnostic refuses to accept is that there is an absolute truth. And what the atheist refuses to accept is that this absolute truth is something outside of ourselves and larger than ourselves. This takes some humility to acknowledge, but also common sense.
I do not believe that a baby gets his best physical food by sucking his thumb, nor that a man gets his best moral food by sucking his soul and denying its dependence on God or other good things.
The skeptic does not contribute anything to a religious discussion except doubt, which is no contribution at all. It's purely a negative. Chesterton says that most of the current chaos in religion comes from the fact that modern skeptics always begin by telling us what they do not believe. But even in a skeptic, we want to know first what he does believe. So with the skeptic, the best defense is offense, to simply turn around and ask, what do you believe? Most of the enemies of the faith can be skewered with their own ideas. One of Chesterton's simplest and most effective devices is simply to restate his opponent's argument in a way that makes it sound ridiculous, which is what it usually is. He has the ability to slay his opponents with their own swords, cordially, of course. The reason he stumbled upon this technique is kind of personal. You see, it was listening to the arguments against Christianity that led him to become a Christian.